I'm Dr. Bryan Wright, and this is Run to the Huddle. So we want to talk about advice today because advice is as plentiful as the sands on the beach. You can get advice anywhere. And what do they say? Like, advice is like armpits. Everybody has some and they all stink. But basically, the idea is that advice, because it is so plentiful, it can come from books, podcasts, it can come from social media posts, and it's everywhere. It's ubiquitous. And how does one really parse through all that to get the true wisdom, right? So I've heard it said, where's the wisdom lost in knowledge and where's the knowledge lost in information? And I think that for me, I have taken a lot of advice from people in the past where that advice did not serve the better good, but because it came with so much fervency or because it came from some of my family members, I was ready to jump into that advice because it was well-meaning people trying to help me out. Well, let me first frame how I see advice giving and taking. I've got 3 basic rules that guide me, and I think this would be helpful to you. I would love to hear feedback on this and see if it's something that helps you. But basically, for me, there's 3 rules. The first rule is I don't take advice from anybody who doesn't care about my welfare. Either they care about me or they care about my story or they care about my success. So if they don't care about my success, I'm not taking advice from them. And why would I? Number 2, if they haven't done the thing that I want to do, if they haven't done it successfully, why are they giving me advice in that thing? So I don't take advice from people who have not been successful in that particular category. And number 3, if I don't want to trade places with them in that category, meaning I don't feel like it's a trade up, I'm not taking advice from them. Now, I want to make a caveat here. I'm not saying that I don't like to listen to people and hear their perspectives. Now, perspective is a different thing than getting advice or actually absorbing a change in myself as a result of what somebody is telling me to do. With that, I would like to share a couple of stories with you about advice in my life. And these will translate to, I think, some direct lessons that could really help you, your family members, in your business and life. So let's start with the first story. Wright Physical Therapy is one of the most successful companies I've ever built and sustained. And this years ago was something that may not have been created had I taken the advice of one of my closest relatives. Now, for the sake of anonymity, I don't want to just sell out who it was, but it was somebody I care about very much and was direct relationship. This individual, when it was time for me to start the first clinic of Wright Physical Therapy, had a conversation with me. And essentially, first of all, let me frame this out a little bit. She did not have really any success in business at all whatsoever. And in fact, financially speaking, was not in a financially good place. She did care for me. She cared about my story. She cared about my success for sure. But I definitely would not have wanted to trade places with her in the category that we were discussing. So 2 of the 3 rules violated at the time. I didn't even have these rules really clarified in my own brain. So I had asked this individual, hey, I'm going to start a new clinic. And I am very nervous because my previous businesses that I've done before have not succeeded. I want to know what you think. Now, part of this was just to get sort of the divine signs coming to me that, hey, this was going to be a good thing. So I kind of wanted her to say, hey, I got your back. Go for it. You know you can do this. As it turns out, her advice was, I would not go into business. I would not do that because you've seen how it affected you in life, right? And I think that it was well-meaning advice. Now, this was somebody who was in proximity to me. And so that proximity could have led to an absolute change in the way that I approach things. But there was something inside of me that said, I don't want that to be the answer. That to me is a clue about how I now take advice. If somebody does not want me to do something that I do want to do, and my whole entire body is like, oh, I just wish the answer was something else, that's a clue. There's a book that actually talks about this. It's called Everything is Figure-Outable. And the author, she says, I think it's Marie Forleo. Yeah. She says, what you do is you make up your mind about what you want, and then you flip a coin. And you say, if it's heads, then I'm going to do it. And if it's tails, I'm not going to do it. And she says, when it's tails and you find out that you're not going to do the thing that you felt you wanted to do, then notice how you feel. If you feel disappointed that it was tails, that should be a clue to you. And this was kind of an interesting perspective, right? If it's tails and you're like, dang, then you should pay attention. If it's heads and you feel excited about it, then again, you're on the right path. Now, sometimes we like to leave things up to fates, signs, other types of conditions that guide us into whether or not we should do a big choice. We're not going to talk too much about that here, but in regards to advice, I felt disappointed that her advice was I would not go into business because there were some really good competitors in that space. I felt fear. I felt frustration. I felt like I was shrinking. And one of my rules of thumb is real education empowers people. REEP, real education or real truth empowers people. So if she would have said, I wouldn't go into business with this, but you have some natural talents here, and she had a place where I could trade places with her or where she had success in that category, that would have been something that would have been like, I'm in. So sometimes when people say no, not that as advice, it's not the very best thing for you. No, not this thing, but rather I would say this instead, and then you have a even more resonant feeling. I do lean into that. But she said, don't go into business. So what did I do? I went into business, not to spite her, but actually because I felt the energy of that not resonating with me. And, the company did very well and has done very well. So that's kind of the first piece of advice that was tough for me. Another one in that same category, I remember playing a basketball game where my basketball coach got really mad at me. And so, and I don't blame him actually when I look back at it, but at the time it was a super embarrassing experience. I was playing in Castle Ford, Idaho. If you don't know where that's at, look it up. It's a very teeny town just here in Idaho. We were playing and I was kind of stinking up the floor of the first half. My stats were really, really poor. I had turnovers. I had no points. I think I had like 4 rebounds, and I had shot right as the buzzer was going off for the halftime. I shot an air ball, and we were down by, I think, 10 or some odd points. And anyway, get into the locker room, and my coach, he was like, do not ever shoot another shot in the second half. He was just really upset at me. And, at the time, not only did it embarrass me and hurt my feelings, but it actually sort of sparked something in me that made me really motivated. And I actually did the opposite of what he said. So I went back out, and in my opinion at the time as a player, I was like, look, if I go back out on the court and I just play passive, we're not going to do any better. So I think what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to actually go to the basket, and I'm going to actually draw fouls, and I'm going to make layups, and I'm going to rebound. I'm going to stay as close to the hoop as I can. And so I literally went from 0 fouls in the first half and 0 points to 22 points in 1 quarter and 5 fouls. So I fouled out of the game in the third quarter because I was just so active on the court. We'll call it a piece of advice here. It was my coach telling me do not shoot in the second half. Wound up to be something that was kind of a reverse piece of coaching. And he came up to me after the game and said, hey, my intention was to get you stirred up so that you kind of snapped out of your little like coma. And I believed him. Like, I don't think he was just taking credit for that on fire third quarter, but it really taught me something about how we take advice, about what resonates inside of us when we hear advice. Now, I've had excellent advice before as well, right? And one of those happens to be a coach that is actually in my world right now. And I had a couple of really tough blows in my personal life, some back-to-back things that I would consider to be life-changing. And my coach said, today's a day where I'm going to challenge you. He looked at me in the eyes and he said, are you okay if I challenge you? And I said, it depends. Like, what are you talking about? And he said, are you okay if I trigger you? And of course, my first thing to do was recoil, but I'm thinking to myself, This is a person who cares about me. This is a person who I very much respect. I would trade places with in this category. And this is a person who's done it before. So yes, go ahead. And he asked me the question about two things that really, really were hurting me from other people, two separate people that had really hurt my life. And he asked me when I decided to create that problem. And I was like, okay, time out. Like, you don't understand what these two people have done to me. And he said, yeah, but there's a pattern there. Do you see the pattern? Well, of course, there was a pattern, but how was I the cause of that pattern when there were two people that were doing something to me that was like so far off the wall? Now, I want to just take a quick break on this particular subject for a moment to say that he wasn't teaching me to take on guilt. He was not teaching me to take on shame about what had happened. He was teaching me to take responsibility. You know the difference. The feeling is a lot different. Responsibility has power backing it, and shame and guilt have force backing it. And I believe force is weak and detracting, and I believe that power is strong and attracting. So responsibility is what he was teaching me, right? And he was saying, you're not responsible necessarily for the way that they're treating you, but you are response-able, right? You see the difference? Like, you are able to respond. So when did you decide to create this problem? And yeah, it did. It actually really triggered me, and it caused me to introspect enough to go, you know what? I can see something inside of myself that needs to change as a result of this. Most people on the planet would not care enough about me to ask the question while I'm in the midst of, let's call it sorrow. I'm in the midst of sadness about these things that are happening to me. But a true coach with true wisdom who had concern for me, who really believed in my welfare and believed that I could do better, said, I care enough about you that today, even though you're hurting, I'm going to help root out that pain. And we're going to do it by getting to the source of it, right? Which is me being at power and at cause over my life. So first of all, my coach knows who he is. And if he sees this, I just want to thank you for that, because those are the types of pieces of advice that move the needle, right? And that's what really changes the game. And I'm grateful for it. You maybe had coaches that do that for you. You've had somebody who challenged you and cared enough about you to help you see something that was a blind spot. So good piece of advice there. I would say one other piece of advice for me that was really excellent came in the same vein. And this was somebody who said, if you're going to keep doing the same things and expect different results, then I can't keep coaching you. I cannot keep coaching you. If you're going to keep doing the same things and you're going to keep asking me, what do I do? What do I do? What do I do? And you want a different result, I'm going to actually fire you as a client. And it woke me up. It was like, okay, so what is it that you mean? He goes, if by this time in the next 3 months, you're still in the same situation that you're in, then I will stop coaching you. So you get to decide if you're going to make that change or not. Well, I cared about this individual. He was, to me, this like great guiding light in my life. And I appreciated so much that he would take the time and energy to say, look, I don't need your paycheck. I don't need you to pay me. I'm not going to stay here with you just sort of like coddling you along and making you feel like, oh, I love you so much, but we'll get through this. I'm ready for you to make the changes that you need to see the external change. I want you to make the internal private changes that lead to the external public changes that you're wanting. So advice is a funny thing, right? Like, advice is a bit like armpits. Everybody has them and they stink. But by the same token, these can be life-giving armpits that actually articulate one of the most highly moving joints in the body. This is the PT in me speaking now, right? Many degrees of freedom at the armpit. It doesn't just stink. Sometimes advice can be something that actually frees movement up as well. So if you choose wisely the podcast that you listen to, the people that you associate with, the ones that you take advice from, it actually is the thing that most moves us toward our goals. And the gap between where we are and where we want to be is resistance. And that resistance occurs when we stay with the same exact thoughts we had yesterday, the next day, and we keep trying to find some magic bullet. Most of the time, trying to get advice from multiple mentors and continuing down the same path that we always have to get the magic bullet leads us to the same outcomes, if not worse in some cases. So I'm going to challenge you to use these types of guidelines for how you take advice, what books you're going to read or listen to, what podcasts you want to listen to, because your time is valuable. And of the millions of options that you have, probably one of the greatest distinguishing factors is going to be who you choose to listen to, what books you choose to read, what media you choose to spend your time with. And that, to me, is where we can close the gap on that resistance. So good luck to you on that. And it's been good talking about this subject with you.